Hey everybody, what's going on? Terminus here with another episode of Technolyze for you. I'm starting back up the treadmill. Not sure how much I can actually get out because in end of February I'm writing an exam. But other than that, welcome back. This is recorded during my holidays, during my vacation. I do hope you all had a wonderful Christmas time and you had a nice start into the new year. I hope everything you're doing is on course. Shout out to all of the other reactors and YouTubers out there. Autosave is on pause right now. Tibu is like slowly grinding back into it with like very inconsistent schedule. Pink is kind of dragging his feet. And I guess I have been doing the same thing to a degree, right? I've been taking like a week off, maybe two. I know the Flaming Shark has also like had some like thing where actually he has done a decent amount of videos lately. So here's to that. Shout out Shark. Maybe you're watching this. I don't know. I don't know if you're watching Technolyze, but you're probably only watching. Oh no, you're. What am I talking about? You actually have access to these because you're supporting me right now. So thanks for that, by the way. Thank you to all the top tier patrons, which is Flaming Shark, Steps Shave, and Nathan Zink are the big ones, including Cardboard, who's actually supporting me like with the most money that most of the patrons are actually more money than most of the patrons are actually supporting me with. So thank you for that, and also big shout out for Cardboard in general because I've mentioned that a couple of times, but he's sponsoring this series specifically, Technolyze, which I do enjoy a lot. And yeah, we're gonna get into this right now. I've Technolyze episode 16 up here and ready to go. I don't want to keep you any further. I'm very curious what's about to happen. We had like Ghost in the Shell vibes last time, where there's like a lot of like people disappearing and seemingly changing their mind and being indoctrinated and brainwashed and whatnot, and we don't know what's really going on. It's very weird for us as the audience because obviously we're not in on it. The only thing we do know is this like blue-haired brother that has kind of a connection to Inishi being really like starting to interfere with everything, and they're part of like a higher sect of people who the doctor used to belong to, and she was rejected by them seemingly, or at the very least ignored, despite her like going down there and trying to, I guess, prove her theory through research and actually making Technolyze technology viable for some of these people. Be that I don't know if that's actually something that's going to be useful for the people who are I think they're called the class or something. I don't know, like the angel people, basically, like the higher society people that are living in a separate like society from that. And I don't know what's going to happen to the city because there's a lot of chaos and infighting right now. It's kind of almost seems like everything is tearing, like everybody's tearing each other apart, and obviously Ichise is in the middle of that, and he's trying to desperately fight his fate in the way that he's like, well, I've been like, Ran has been foretelling me that I will be the one who's destroying this entire city, or who's taking big part in being responsible for destroying the city, and then I'll be like alone again. And he doesn't want to be alone. I mean, I guess this is like a fundamental human experience, right? These questions we start asking ourselves, and in a way, even though Ichise is in very extraordinary circumstances, really, we can still apply that to our own personal life, where we're getting into situations where we're starting to question ourselves, and where we're like, will I end up all alone when all of this is over? Will like the outcome of that, will that be, and why is that? And he's starting to ask these questions where he's like, I want to understand more about what's going on inside of your head. Well, and he's naming the dog specifically because he got more or less kidnapped by the dog, and then they're like out in those ruins after she got rejected and almost assassinated, and he saved her life. And he's like, I want to understand more about how you think and what's going on in your world. What's your worldview? Because I feel like maybe one of the reasons why I'm supposedly destroying or gonna destroy everything might be that I'm not trying to understand people, right? That I'm not like, we see that very early in Technolyze, when we start out, which is one of the contributing factors why this was so frustrating for me to watch in the beginning. Not that it wasn't interesting, but it was frustrating in the way that it was very hard to dig your mind into Ichse because we got so little of who he actually is, and he was so unemotive. Now that he's starting to talk, now that he's starting to let on, right, break that shell and let you kind of feel what's going on inside of him. This is the moment where it's like gets very, very interesting, right? Beyond like just mystery and being like intrigued. We're going from that and being frustrated of not being able to dig deeper. We're going into, oh, okay, this is what's going on inside of him. Now suddenly he's like we can identify ourselves with him. We can like take certain parts of who we are and project them onto him, or we can take certain things of what he expresses he is and kind of compare that with what our own experiences of life is. And I'm sure we do find a lot of similarities here and there, and can kind of guess where his emotional state is and where his emotional state is going and what he wants to do. Now, if that turns out to be actually viable, what he wants to do, that's another question, right? If he and Onishi and everybody is actually going to survive, that's another question. But we'll have to see if all of the things that Ran predicted will actually become true, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? She tells them, and her telling everybody is already part of the timeline continuum and whatnot. Or if there is something that can be changed about fate. And obviously the fundamental message of this series in many ways could change depending on what the outcome of this is going to be. Although I do feel like Techhnolyze in many ways is a very artsy piece, and very artsy pieces often don't have a clear conclusion or message, but more leave you as the viewers to interpret what you want to feel and what you want to like put into it and project onto it and derive off of it. Because oftentimes artsy pieces are just trying to show you subjective impressions of reality and put that out, and like not making a statement of what's like of a worldview, right? How is this turning out to be? Because oftentimes when you have like more mainstream appeal series like Attack on Titan, for example, or I don't know, My Hero Academia or whatever, like shonen common, but not just shonen, also just general more mainstream pieces of media, what you do find is that oftentimes the author, in how they end something and how they like progress through the story, they display a certain kind of worldview that they want to put out there. And they're like, okay, if an author asks, how do I want to end my series? Oftentimes that is the fundamental question of, what do I want the reader or the viewer to actually leave off on, right? What do I want them to take away from it? I mean, look at Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is one of the like main series, by the way. I've been little tangent, but I've been kind of like contemplating if I want to do an opinion piece on Eva, because I've been rewatching it with a good friend of mine recently, and it's been a lot of fun. So I do wonder if I want to do that, if I actually have the time to do that eventually. That would be a cool thing to do, right? I have some stray thoughts written down, but yeah, Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of those pieces where I do feel like what Anno really wanted to leave us with is this powerful message that he builds in the end of it, but it's not something that he just tags on. It's something that spans itself through the very beginning of the series, right? Of the first episode all the way down to the last episode. And even if you leave all of like the imagery, the symbolism, the references to different mostly Abrahamic religions out of that, then you get to a very core message, which is like, it's very hard to find your way in life, right? And kind of a more of a open free space exploration of what makes me think of myself and others the way I do. How do I define myself? How do things in my personal world, are they constructed, and what is the world I see around me? And then the answer to that being maybe, right, going through that conclusion of like from getting from before this the self-doubt and self-hatred and loathing and feeling worthless, all the way to the conclusion of, hey, maybe it's worth, right? Maybe it's okay for me to be the way I am. So this is like very strong messaging in a way, but there's also very like Evangelion is kind of in the middle because it's also highly artistic in many ways, but the main point of it has a red thread. Now the question is if Techhnolyze does have that, or if it's even more of an explorative piece where we do just look at different aspects of society, right, that are written in there, right? We look at dynamics between characters without defining them too much, without saying, hey, you are supposed to be like this, or hey, this character ended up like this because this is how it goes, right? No, we just explore something on a very experimental level, and this is how it feels at the moment, but it could obviously be ending with a strong red thread if the creators of Techhnolyze would want that to be the case. But yeah, enough rambling. Let's just get into Techhnolyze episode 16 and see what this series has to offer to us. I'm going to start in a 3, a 2, a 1. Okay. Roughly now, we sync up. Ooh. A spring of water. Ooh, how we close the eyes off? Interesting. Oh, we had that before. That question, right? Oh, no, we progress. Okay. Is he like the like grandfather or father of Ron, or? Yet. Shameful. Oh, and he knows she isn't, and she's foretelling that she isn't. But he's like, I wish it was different, right? And somebody shot him? Are we gonna fall into the water? Blood seeping into it? Oh no, we have a transition. Okay, interesting. The sixth step. Right. So there's disagreement. Is it? Because seem to have been murdered. Well, then you can do whatever you feel is right, right? Seer's words are lost. Will she? Yeah. Honestly, if fate is unstoppable, then you can do whatever you feel is right. Also very convenient. very convenient for them to put like her refusing to want to see this suffering onto her being young, right? Which is not necessarily a causation. There can be a person who's like 90 years old. It's like, I don't want to see this shit. Is this a doll or is it her? Because she almost like doll-like.
なぜ急に姿をくらましたんです？
別
にそんなつもりはないけど。
It was your intention, but you know.
やっぱり連絡が取れなくなれば姿をくらましたことになるんじゃないですか。丘の上で何が起きてるんです？教えてくれませんか、ドク。
I never noticed that he actually calls her dog in the sense of like the English word dog. And here we are back with Shinji, I think, right?
カクア。
さあ。
用意たちはどうした？
あれ、表にいなかった？だったらどっかその辺に。
ゴロ。何人残ってる？
多分20人ちょっと。
多分。
20 people.
ひとしやマルトも夕べから連絡取れなくて。
わかった。
きっと家でまだ寝てるんじゃない？
ヨーコ。
何？
やめたかったらやめればいい。お前は自由だ。好きにしろ。
なんでそんなこと？
これだけは言っておく。俺に情けをかけるな。お前でもただじゃおかね
え。I don't know if she pities him.
になってもいいことがあるとは思えねえ。戦ったら戦ったでめんどくせえことになりそうだ。どれをとっても気に入らねえ。気に入らねえんだよ。
Things are happening that are outside of his control, and he doesn't like that.
思想的発展による関係の解消です。我々の理想をより発展した形で実現できる、より大きな存在と巡り合えた。だから私たちは行くのです。
Oh shit. It's like they're being hijacked.
あなたを誘わなかったのは、あなたの自発的な思想的発展に期待するからです。それがどういう意味かわかりますか？あなたのその左腕、とうに気づいていましたよ。
テクノライズされたからこそ、テクノライズの悪しき側面が把握できたのだ。テクノライズは肉体の敵だ。肉体を侵し、精神を侵し、やがては人そのもの。
だが、あなたはその左腕を隠さねば、連合の理想を唱えることはできなかった。滑稽で惨めなことです。あの方はそうした不完全さを最も嫌われるのですよ。誰に言われるまでもなく、あなたの思想的、肉体的脆弱性にあなた自身気づいてほしい。
It's very interesting how we have that happening all at the same time.
いつの日か我々と共に行動してくれることを期待していますよ。
Like somebody's manipulating that, right? Dissenting opinion suddenly happening. I mean, obviously it can be that this is seemingly happening suddenly, and actually it was a long time coming.
ずっと続いていたものが姿を現してきただけ。それだけのことよ。
あなたはその片棒を担いでいたんじゃなかったんですか？
そのつもりだったけど、違ったようね。
私にその片棒を担げと言ってきたやつがいましてね。
あったの？あの男に。
顔は見ていませんが、イカれた演説を聞かされましたよ。無論誘いは断りましたが、ドク、あれはどういう人間なんです？
She knows more, of course.
知ってどうしようっていうの？
私は以前、あの男に会ったことがあるような気がするんです。
Yeah, the boy.
気がするだけですが。
気のせいでしょうね。クラス内部でもあのレベルの人間と直接顔を合わせられるのは稀だから。
奴は本気なんですか？
あの男はイカれた思想でルクスを自分のものにしようとしている。
And she disagrees with the ideology, okay.
そしてそれを実現できる立場にある。クラスの中でも異端だったはずなの。奴らはこの私の技術、この思想を私ごと抹消しようとしてきた。私はもう用済みってことよ。どうするつもり？何をしようとこの街は変わってしまう。誰にも
Question is how it can change.
たとえあなたでも誰であっても。
It's not change what we're fighting, right?
少し表の空気を吸いたいんだが、若いの付き合ってくれねえか。オルガノはどうだ？もう慣れたか？相変わらず口数が少ねえな。それでもここまで続いたところを見ると根っからやってわけでもねえらしい。
わからない。
Hmm.
よくわからない。なぜ俺がこうしてここにいるのか。
Why I'm here as I am.
あなたは人をいっぱい傷つける。
物見の言葉を気にしているのか。
Yes.
忘れろ。言葉はあくまで言葉に過ぎん。
言葉。
自分の未来が分かったところで何になる？ガベの連中のように何もせずに諦めていけるのか？それともただ悩んでやり過ごすのか？
Yeah.
俺はどっちも嫌いでね。ガベに行かず町に残ったのもそのせいだ。てめえの将来はてめえで切り開きたくなったのさ。
Even if it is an illusion.
お前は何がしたい？何が欲しい？
俺は
まずはそれを知ることだ。それが分かれば何も悩む必要もない。あとは手に入れるだけだ。あいつがなぜお前を使わしたのか。お前に何を望んでいるのか。お前がここで俺を護衛することの意味を考えるんだ。そうしてりゃ、いずれ物見の言葉など無意味になる。
Yeah, you come to your own conclusion. I really like that approach, right? Because like, even if everything is predetermined, does it matter to you?
遅くなった。申し訳ない。
気にするな。定例とはいえ、それほど時間はかからない。
どういうことだ？
単刀直入に言う。オルガノは今日で終わりだ。ルクスはこれからクラースが直接統治することになる。
Okay.
俺が向こうとのパイプ役を仰せつかった。今後一切俺からの指示には例外なく従ってもらう。これは決定事項だ。議論の余地はない。以上だ。
強引だな。
散々布石は打ったつもりだったが。
形式に従ってケツを取らせてもらう。小伯良の言葉に従わぬ者は席を立て。いいのか？
親父からは大西さんに従えとだけ言われています。
残念だな。あんたは俺と同じ夢を見てるのかと思ってたよ。次に会った時は俺に背を向けるなよ。
ついさっきまで異常はなかったのですが。
中はどうなってる？
佐々木が確認に行ったきり戻ってきません。
中に戻るぞ。若いの。連中が襲ってきたら迷わず仕留めろ。他の患者を傷つけずにだ。いいな。
That is gruesome.
ひでえこと。
that part of the takeover as well. Sorry, by the way, I'm a little bit low energy today. Also got a little bit of back pain. Oof. Holy fuck, dude. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here we go. First time we see it in person. Wait. Wait, what was the thing that flashed there? Like the word. I need to go back and see. Just obliterating them. And the weapon doesn't work for him. Or maybe he just didn't know how to use them. Oh, there's two of them. Bro's just say, holy shit. He's just like, get on my back. We're getting out. Holy, it's just like fucking commandos or something. Oh, come on. Don't you make that Splinter Cell nose at me. Ooh, who saved them? And there is blood in them, so... Are they robots or are they organic? Partially. Because they look very much... Yeah, they're organic inside.
誰が言っているのだ？主にラカンのメンバーだった者たちです。彼らの腕一本、足一本と言わず、両手両足をすべて切り落とし、新たなユニットと交換しなさい。彼らは私の思想を理解しているだけなのだ。肉体から理解してもらわないと意味がない。かしこまりました。
Wait. So these people are like, no, we're gonna reject like God, but whatever, and he's like, fucking cut off all their limbs. They need to understand me because he's like, he's got artificial limbs.
町は危険です。今親父さんに何かあれば元に戻るものも戻らなくなってしまいます。敬吾、俺がな、諦めろ。あれはただの便宜だ。亡くなったところでどうということはね。それよりもお前がやるべきことをやれ。
It's like the organization is not the important thing.
親父さん、若いの。また会おう。
Almost like he's smiling, but he isn't. Ooh, he's getting some signals. Like, I swear I could have heard something or read something like mother or something. Ooh. I guess that images flashes. Ooh, he's projecting himself. If you say so, my dude. And we got all the Techhnolyze parts that they just put together.
新市民の先駆けとも言うべき美しき肉体を備えた兵士シェイプスの諸君である。
春彦、やっと丘の上が見えてきたぜ。
民よ、彼らの後に続きたまえ。民よ、私を信じろ。私の理想を、私の声を。
What if they
私の
don't?
精神の発言たる新市民と信徒の未来を。
終わったな。考えている暇もないようだ。突破するぞ。
Don't tell me this is the end. Damn! Okay. Alright, fair play. Very interesting. I feel like there is something to, like, her closing her eyes like that. Maybe closing her eyes in front of the future, right? Like, not wanting to see it as we've seen, like, this whole time. But yeah, let's, let's, boom, get it on the screen. Go all the way back. Right, boom. And see what we can pick from, all that chaos and whatnot. Alright, so we have a new primary antagonist. I mean, he kind of, like, creeped in since like episode 11, I think, when Yoshi was the primary antagonist and was kind of offed in that episode. I think it was 11 where he died. It's very interesting, but because I do think that Yoshi actually didn't come from the class, right? Yoshi did come from outside, from somewhere completely else, and he's like, it's like one of those like classic tales where it's like the outsider comes and he's gonna be like the harbinger of the city's destruction, and then it's like everything breaks loose and all of the factions are fighting. It's very interesting how we peeked into this society as something very foreign to us, something we don't know, and all that mystery around the Techhnolyze, like the technology, we still don't know where it comes from. We know like she perfected it, right? Like Doc perfected it, and we do know that Ich's father supposedly actually developed the process and making Techhnolyze viable for people, and that raffia is this resource that people are like that they're mining, that they are procuring in order to fuel this technology. But the question is exactly what does the technology do with you, because beyond like just normal artificial limbs and just the cyberpunkish stuff of like replacing people's limbs and actually giving them more information, is there some kind of like almost metaphysical element to this? Because this is oftentimes what it feels when the people are just like they connect to the Techhnolyze, and you actually have like supposedly an aspect. I don't remember it exactly anymore, but I know in very much in the beginning, in the first couple of episodes, they talked about how aspects of other people can be put into the technology. Like the Ichi's mother is kind of in the tech that he has. So the question is, how does that work, right? How is that? But is there some kind of like soul metaphysical thing that is conjoined with that? And even just like the way we do see people's vision and how these little things pop up, and it's not like in classical sci-fi where you do have like the menu coming up and you like go through the menus and you see like the specific statistics. It's just weird shapes and forms that are popping up on your screen. And just like this episode where there are blue-haired antagonist kind of projects himself into everybody who has Techhnolyze limbs, and is like doing an Eren Yeager, basically saying like, people of Lucas, listen to me, this is what's gonna happen. It's very interesting. And obviously we still have Gabe, the big theme. Let's start with that, right? We do have I wish I could see your face one last time, but my wish will not be granted, right? We do have that idea of unfortunately, we have to accept all of the things that are coming. I don't know if that's her uncle or her like her grandfather or something, but it's somebody who held her very dear, and he apparently lives in the city, and he has a flower, one of the flowers of her, and he's like, I wish I could have seen you one last time. I know my death is predicted and it's gonna happen, and I know we should not question that, but I would like to question it because I would so very much desire to see you, which is very interesting. Like the flower petals falling, very symbolic. I do like this transition here, right? Like where we go from like a and suddenly the swan is in the, or not the swan, but like the, oh no, it's not the swan, it's like a, whatchamacallit, I don't know how do you call them in English, but like the animal with the beautiful feathers and whatnot. And yeah, then we center on him. Great cinematography once again, right, with the like a little bit of like the dark light on one side of the face, a perfect profile shot, kind of making it somewhat sinister appearing, and we do have the perfectly symmetrical shot of him like being right in the middle, which is unusual for some of like the, I mean, it's usual for like the form of presentation that we want to present him in a central role in actually determining what the people of Gabe are doing. But we do have these dissenting opinions, which is, I do wonder if Gabe is actually opposed to what's happening through the class, right? If the person, like the blue-haired person was like doing these things with class and whatnot, if he is actually working towards a goal that is opposed to what the vision of Ran of the future is, or if the class is actually part of that vision. Either way, Ran is closing herself off. She's not foretelling the future anymore, but obviously in all of these stories where we talk about fate, where we talk about the future in general, we have to keep into account that possibly her vision of the future takes into account her own actions of at some point stopping to talk to them, right? How precisely does she see the future, and what are her visions? Are they just flashes and she knows what happens, or is it piece for piece, right? And if it's just flashes and she just knows what the outcome of something will be, it's very likely that if fate doesn't change, that anything she does is not gonna change anything. But then we get into the territory of like Gabe being like, we must not interfere into the fate of like Lucas and everything else. It's gonna happen how it's always gonna happen, and it's impossible to change it. Then the question is, if a person within Gabe is like, nah, hell no, I'm gonna change it, then what they would be doing is already foretold, and it would have happened either way. So what would be happening is them being like, nah, I'm gonna change it, and they don't manage to change it, or they manage to cause it actually. But if the future is really not, like, if you can't change the visions that the seer has of the future, then it's pointless anyway, and you might as well try, right, to get an outcome that you would rather have, right? So inaction is a very, like, maybe emotionally a logical conclusion of that, being like, my fate is predetermined, I might as well do nothing. But if you stand up and you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do as best as I can, right? I don't know every detail of the future, I'm gonna do as best as I can. Then you do at least know that you've tried everything that you can to actually change what's gonna happen. And if it's gonna happen anyway, then it happened, and that's just how it is, but at least you know you tried. If you didn't, you just fucking sat down, you were like, I'm gonna accept everything that's gonna happen, I'm not gonna do anything, right? People like plus splatter, whatever, right? Haha, this guy's burning. Whatever, I'm not gonna do anything. Then that is basically also part of the fate. So just do what you feel like doing and think is right. In this case, right? I don't understand these people which are like, no, you don't understand. You must not interfere because it's gonna happen anyway. Well, dude, you're kind of full of bullshit, right? Like, if it's gonna happen anyway, then every action everybody takes, it's gonna happen anyway, right? So you being concerned about people interfering has me believe that everything is gonna happen like this and you can't change it not as firm as you might wanna pretend it is, right? And maybe you're not bullshitting on purpose, maybe you just don't realize it. But fact is, maybe the leader of Gabe here, I think they called him the Sage, right? Maybe he actually doesn't want specific things to happen. Or he wants exactly what has been foretold to happen, and he knows that if people interfere and act differently, it could change. So what does he do? He kind of just puts all of his people in line. He's like, it's not gonna change anyway, don't interfere. But if you think about it, you're like, okay, if I interfere, it's part of fate anyway, right? If what you say is true. And if what you say is not true, then I have to start questioning everything you've been saying with such conviction, right? But that's the difficult thing about future predictions and whatnot. Ran, on the other hand, is obviously the one who sees all of these things, well, some of these things probably. And obviously we don't know if these factions, like I said, there's a lot of dissenting factions. Shinji and the whatchamacallem, I don't know, the his faction. A lot of people who were like, so long guys, we'll right, our goals changed, whatever, we don't want to be here anymore, goodbye. Right, the next day or a couple of days later, or maybe even at the same time, people here are like, well, we know we've all lived like that, not interfering and whatnot, but we don't disagree, we're gone. And then people of the union are like, you know what, our ideologies kind of change, we're making this decision, and it feels like they're kind of almost being puppeteered here, right? Because all of that is happening at the same time. So it's really weird that all of this is happening. Meanwhile, Doctor is in a depression doom spiral. Holy shit, because he's been rejected by the class, basically, was part of that. It's insane how doll-like she looks in that shot, right? How you can almost see her, her mouth opening, and then you see the little in between plastic of the marionette strings or whatnot. But yeah, Onishi, obviously, great shot once again, right? Most of his face actually takes in the frame, but we do have that little part of the background over here, and the dark streaks going over his contours, where emphasizing his facial structure, because if when the way the shadow meets his face basically indicates that the light source is coming from this side, and everything that the light hits is at the forefront, and everything that the light doesn't hit that is in shadow is actually further back. So you do have the clear contours of his face emphasized here. Obviously, in such a shot where somebody like Onishi is supposed to appear as strong-willed and no bullshit and serious, somebody firm, somebody who has a will to apply to the world and wants to know what's going on, and has a straight, very, very straightforward agenda. There's this idea of displaying them with very pronounced contours, because it feels especially the frame of the face and everything, it does feel instinctively like somebody who has clear edges to be a lot more solid, right? Like rock or whatnot, from an artistic perspective. Also very cool and interesting that we have constantly this imagery of Dog where in the background all of these strings are kind of the cables are all behind her, almost like she is herself connected to the cables, right? Like she is dependent on the technology that she built her life on, obviously. But yeah. Him being don't pity me that everybody's been leaving me, whatever, right? Don't think we'd gain anything by becoming pals with the ghosts. But if we fight against them, it would be troublesome as well, right? And the ghosts are the class, right? The soldiers of the class that have been interfering. It's very interesting how we should talk about changing ideologies and weaknesses and technolization being the enemy. We have these weird lucid LSD-ish rejections that are while he's talking, maybe in his mind's eye, kind of, right? Or maybe it's his point of view, actually, because he doesn't have eyes, because we don't know, right? He has that visor. We don't know if he doesn't just like maybe has lost his eyesight or something, and that's right. And maybe he had some Techhnolyze eyes at some point in time, took them out, or maybe he just like he had various problems like with his arm, and his arm got Techhnolyzed, but then he stopped. He could have enhanced his eyes, but he's like, no, this stuff is the devil's work or whatever. Don't know if that's correct, right? But at the very least, we do know that it is a way of like our new blue-haired guy to interfere with everybody, right? Like to influence them, to be connected to them in some kind of intricate network that we are as the audience are not prone to. We don't know if all of the Techhnolyzed people are connected on the back end or not, or if there's like, I mean, now we know kind of, it's like a soft confirmation that this is to some degree the case. She looks very beautiful in this shot, like with the ruffled hair and the gaze down, and obviously her lipstick has always been like pronounced in the entire series, where it's like she is supposed to be seen as somebody who is possibly desirable, somebody who is like maybe also being perceived as sympathetic towards us as the audience and towards our main character. Right. She's like, he has been kind of a radical element not too long ago, but at this point in time, he has supposedly taken control, I feel. Right? At least that's how it comes across to me. A lot of beautiful shots, amazing shots, and how we're talking about things, where he's like, and it's almost like Ichise is a young boy, right? A kid or a toddler, never had the development that he should have had, like almost like a war orphan that just ran from conflict to conflict, and at some point in time, peace came to him, right? Either being forced upon him, or at the very least, he found it in a way. And now he's trying to find out all of these things. Who am I? What do I want to do with my life, right? He doesn't know, because there's so much out there, and there's so little that he really knows about everybody else and about himself as well. And also, he's been foretold the future, where it's like, dude, right? What do you... But what the old man is saying is very interesting to me, which is like, does it really matter, right? Look at what other people are doing and start to question it. Start to think about, why are they doing the things they're doing? Why does he have you protect me, right? Why, right? All of these things, just think about these things. And in time, if you give yourself time, if there's like contemplation going on, you will come to your own conclusions. Now, if those conclusions are factually right, that is a whole different side of things. There's entire streams of philosophy that deal with the fact that maybe there is no factual reality at all. As a psychologist, I would say that anyway, right? Because we construct our reality. But obviously, I would say that we have some kind of like common source of sensations, right? I don't believe that the whole world isn't real. I do believe that it exists in some shape or form, and whatever we see and we experience and we feel and we smell and we hear, all of these things are how our brain, specifically our own brain, not like everybody's brain, but just like our individual brain, interprets all of the signals of the existing material world around us that's coming in, right? And that specifically makes our reality a unique reality. It makes our reality wholly and completely unique from everybody else's reality. But we have common ground, of course, because we have the same sensations that, or well, mostly, right? The same sensations that exist at the root of that reality that our brain constructs, right? The only difference is what's in between, right? You do have the material world and reality. You have the part of the material world and reality that we can actually possibly perceive. Then you have the material world and reality that we actually pay attention to. The material world and reality that the filters that are within our systems are not filtering out, because they need to filter stuff out, because otherwise our brain would be overwhelmed. It wouldn't have enough processing power to actually take that in, right? And then even beyond those filters, right? Because filters kind of pre-filter also based on our priorities and our like worldview, on our like definite biases that everybody has. And then we still have like whatever we take in and actually goes, like, we pay attention to, we take in, that doesn't get filtered out. Then we do have what our brain actually makes of it. And after what our brain makes of it, or like our sensation systems within our brain makes of it, then we have what the analytical part and the emotional part of our brain makes of it, and how it judges those things to be, right? There's so many steps in between of the actual existing reality that is outside, right? That we all share. And what actually gets settled in our brain, what gets settled in our memories, that there's obviously a lot of error in between, like not error in the set, like deviation in the sense of like what everybody actually perceives. And I guess this is just what makes reality so subjective to everybody. And obviously we can argue about if the real world actually exists. There is extreme positions in philosophy that actually deal with the fact is anything outside of myself, is anything outside of that real, right? You look at stuff like The Matrix, they actually kind of, maybe not deep dive into it, but they kind of just start to prod people with it. That they are like, look, who says that there isn't like, right, that we aren't all like just connected to computers with our brain and like grown up in tubes, right? It could be a reality. Now, is it likely? Probably not, right? But it is not outside, like it is not a factual impossibility, right? And it takes like these more extreme philosophical ideas of what reality really is, and it kind of like just slightly introduces you to the idea that it could be the case. Now, obviously, this is an extreme view to take, and then you have to ask yourself, even if I'm in a simulation, right? Even if like everything that I see around me isn't real, what can I do about it? Because that's the real thing, right? Like, I can go through life and be like, everything is predetermined, or there's huge conspiracies and it's all happening and whatnot, right? Like we can't do anything against it, and trust nobody and trust nothing. And what do we have then, right? We have a world where we can trust absolutely nothing. Maybe not even ourselves, because we ourselves are being influenced. And then everything becomes meaningless, right? We lose meaning because the more things we have that are absolutely not in our control, that we can't verify, that we can't like put like data to and be like, okay, this is how it actually works, right? At least within the framework of like, let's say, our shared reality or whatnot. The less we have, the more we feel like we're not in control. And human beings need this control, right? To a degree, right? And obviously, if you talk to different people, you will realize that humans can't have total 100% control over every aspect of their lives. That is an impossibility. At the same time, like you can also not have no control over your life. There is always some agency that you have. Now, if that agency is real or not, right, we get into the territory of like, is destiny a thing or not, right? Like, is everything predetermined because everything is a cause and effect? Because like millions of subatomic reactions are happening all around us, and they influence whatever decision we are gonna make before we ourselves even decide what we're gonna do. And we kind of retroactively explain why we did the things we do by trying to justify it, but in reality it's just an automatic reaction of us. But that's right, that is, we're going so much into these details of I can't do anything about everything around me, that like giving up is the only choice that you have if you lead that way of thinking to its logical conclusion. And what does it help you as a human being to stop, right? Like to stop thinking and just be like, it is what it is, I'm done, right? Like not do anything anymore. That's like pure nihilism. That's not a way to lead life, right? If everything is predetermined, hell yeah, then let everything be predetermined in the way that I make my decisions, right? If I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, okay, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like going bouldering today, right? Going climbing, whatever, indoor climbing. then fucking do it, right? Obviously, I could get up and like, I feel like bouldering, but what does it even mean, right? Everything is predetermined anyway, right? Right? No need to strive for improvement. If I'm meant to become like somebody, I will. If I'm not meant to become somebody good at that specific hobby or whatever, right? Then I won't, right? I'll just stay in bed all day. Let me just stay in bed all day. And if I'm meant to like starve myself to death, then I'm starving. Like, that's not a way to approach life. In that way, like, it doesn't really matter anymore if you can change your fate or not. The only thing that matters is what knowledge do I have about the world, right? And how I can influence it. And yes, I can influence it. Even if it was predetermined that I influence something, a certain thing, it's still me making the decision, right? With the information that is given to me. It doesn't change, right? So the question about free will becomes way, way less about like how free we actually are in the grand scheme of the universe, and it becomes more and more focused on how free we actually feel in our personal lives. And I think this is the key, right? This is the key to determining, right? Do I have enough freedom? Do I feel free and happy? Because that is the key to my own happiness. Is it within me? And the answer is wholeheartedly yes, of course. The key to your own misery as well, oftentimes, right? Outside circumstances, you can only affect to a certain degree, but to the degree that you can affect it, even if it was meant to be that way, you can affect it. Like, obviously, if a scientist would magically suddenly know every little thing that exists within this universe and when it happens and how it happens and whatnot, obviously they could perfectly predict what is going to happen throughout every little minute second of their life. And they could, right? And then at some point in time, they could be like, yeah, but I want to take a step in the other direction. And then the question would become, why do you want to take a step in the other direction? And isn't that a natural result of you knowing everything anyway, right? So the question is then, what is going to happen? Are you going to step in the other direction and this is actually going to lead you to where you thought you were going to be in the first place? Or is you trying to take a step in another direction just par for the course, and then you realize you can't do it because it violates your personal rules of morality or personality or whatnot, and you can't bring yourself to do it, and then you're going to go in the direction you thought you were going to go in the first place. But it is still you, right? It is like, it's not like you're being like puppeteered to do a certain thing. It's more like you are deciding consciously to do something, or oftentimes as we go through life, right? Eyes closed, subconsciously as well, automatically. And then we lead our lives to arrive at a certain end, though the question is it really the end what's important, right? Is it really important that each is gonna destroy all of Lucas, or is it important for what reason, right? What road led him to that, right? Is that something that is important for him? Now, obviously, we can argue that fate can be changed. In a world where we do not know the future, fate can always be changed. Because fate is not predetermined, there is no road ahead, the book isn't written yet. We can write the letters on the book ourselves. And I like to believe that, right? I like to believe that obviously every action in the universe has a reaction, so there's somewhat of a predetermined course of how the grand scheme of things is gonna turn out. But each of our own individual decisions are still part of that whole. We are still part of the universe, and as part of the universe, we shape the universe. But very interesting, he's telling him just to think about things. He's telling him, hey, look, think about why you're doing the things you're doing. Think about why Onishi's doing the things they're doing. And just build your own opinion depending on that. And don't look for like predictions of your possible future, because all this is going to do is lead you into a spiral where you can't stop thinking about that specific thing. But obviously it was important that Ichise got to have that prediction, because it kind of sent him on the way to find out more about himself, about what he wants to do, about what he can do, right? How he can apply his own agency onto the story he's living, onto the life he's living, onto the city he's inhabiting. This guy, I don't know what exactly he wants out of this whole deal, right? Because we know he wants to kind of, I guess, belong to the class, more or less, or have the benefits of what the class is having. He thinks that is a cool thing. Maybe he wants to get Techhnolyzed as well and whatnot. That is also, though, because we don't know what the class wants. We don't know what blue-haired antagonist guy wants, because so far we only see that he seems to have some kind of idea of, like, first of all, he doesn't seem to have a lot of moral quandaries about killing a lot of people to get what he wants, to get control. Second of all, he likes to technolyze everything and possibly puppeteer all of these people as soldiers of his happy little army. We do know that he wants to rule Lucas and supposedly wants to bring them prosperity and whatnot, but he wants everybody to conform to his own vision of what the city is supposed to be, of his own vision of what good is, right? What like moral good is, and what like good progression of a society is, how a society is supposed to act and function, right? The question is, why did it take him so long to actually apply that, right? Like, why did it take the class in general so long? But one running theory would be because the doctor said he used to be more fringe in the class. Maybe with time the Overton window actually moved and his like fringe views are now more close to the center of what the class actually has in terms of opinions. We don't know which other individuals exist within the class, only statues that we've seen so far. Not statues, but in a way like robotic bodies and whatnot that keep talking to him. At least that's how it feels like. Maybe people off screen are actually talking to him, but it feels like these robotic bodies are inhabited by something. I think he addressed one of them as his sister. And he is one of the few that still has like human parts and whatnot. But he seems to have this vision of the future of ultra mechanized, technolyzed people who are just following the orders of what he wants them to do. So the question is, what are his grand goals with that? Does he want power and pleasure and whatnot for himself? Or does he feel like he's somehow the salvation of the people down there and he's kind of bringing them into happiness and joy and whatnot? Because he seems to be very authoritarian in that sense, right? He's doing a takeover. He's like, we're gonna run this shit now, right? And he's like, everybody answer to me, and everybody please believe in my message, believe in my ideology, without really telling them what exactly his ideology and plans are for everything, right? That's always very funny if somebody's like, I'm gonna lead you, I'm the only solution to everything, and then they're like, believe in my ideology, and you're like, well, what's your ideology? And then they're like, yeah, I mean, I think this and that, and just believe me, right? I got a plan, trust me, bro. Right? And then enforcing it without convincing people, it's more like, okay, if you don't believe me, if you don't, right, like, then you're against me, and you're gonna get eliminated, right? Like Onishi and everybody else. So, and even if he's doing that with like a noble goal in mind, where it's like, I'm gonna lead all of the corruption and the power-hungry people of the city, and I'm just gonna create a perfect society, doesn't mean that him opposing his will onto everybody else is actually a good thing, right? Is actually a moral thing, is actually the right direction for where it's supposed to go. Really, really nice frame here with like the all of the bars and whatnot, the symmetry that's happening here, and like how the shadows are coming in, like all of like the dark room and like the light coming from the outside, but we're behind bars, kind of like confined. Yeah, I think like there was something that came up here when he was like, I don't know if it's this one or not, right? We do have like the like there's some like they're coming up, right? The robot, and suddenly something flashed here, and I was like, yeah, right, like no, it's not mother, it's matter, whatever this means. MADDRAR, I think. Madar, like weird like flashes of like text over the thing. And then we do have later on, we obviously have the crazy vision of like the very funny that all of this is happening in an opera house. Oh yeah, I need to actually get this conversation again, because this is like complaining. What are they complaining about? They are bored because the people of Gabe offer no resistance, right? So they're like, oh, this is fucking boring. Why are they not offering resistance? We want to fight them? And he's like, he's got technologized limbs, but he's mostly human. Many those who used to be Rakan members, right? Because like Rakan members are the Shinji guys, right? Cut off not only one arm or leg, but all 4 limbs and replace them all with new units. They only understand my ideology, but it is pointless unless they understand me physically as well. So he's like, okay, they understand what I want to achieve, or what I'm like thinking is like my worldview. Ideology is normally like goals that you set yourself, ideals that you put yourself to. But they only understand it on a theoretical level, right? Not on an actual real life physical experience level. And he's like, they need to be brought down on my level in the sense of like their limitations and whatnot, I guess. So what that's gonna do. The problem is we don't know his ideology, so we can't kind of just make that connection just yet. But also very interesting. The more they're showing, the more they're like high class, rich people, right? Because we have all of these associative images, opera house, right? Technology, right? Like fancy stuff as compared to like Lucas, which feels very like for example, Middle Eastern Arabic cities, right? Where there's like partial like decay from the desert basically coming in, or it feels like in other places it feels like a mining city, right? Like with worker class stuff where people are poor and a lot of like rusty old like construction stuff is there. We do have all of these things. It feels industrial. It feels, yeah. We have these images flashing, which is kind of images that we've seen before, right? Except for a few, like this one, for example. But this is more like, I think, the doctor's research. But we see Shinji, we see like different, like the monuments and whatnot. And we see him actually with his eyes open. Doctor is not surprised by that, and he thinks he can have a grab for power. I don't know if Haruhiko is actually with him, or if he's like playing the deep agent and actually on Onishi's side or whatnot. Because he seemed to get along very well with like Ichise and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, could still be. And we ended on this, which is crazy. But yeah, that was Techhnolyze episode 16. I hope you all enjoyed that. Go check out my other stuff. I've been reacting to Arcane lately. At this point in time, if you see this on YouTube, Arcane's probably almost over. But go check it out. Check out Arcane, Monogatari, Bocchi, whatever you want to do. And I'll see you next time.